Welcome back to another episode of Backyard Science. This week, we've been learning all about domesticated animals and what they tell us about the wild. Well, today we're going to focus on an animal that you might not think of as a pet, and that is pet rats. They are actually great pets, and I have two of them, so let's talk a little bit about them. So something you might not know about rats is that they are related to not only wild rats, but other different types of rodents. And rodents are actually the largest group of mammals that we have. So there are about 4,000 species of mammals living today, and half of them, or a bit under half, are rodents. And so there are a lot of different rodent species that you probably recognize, like squirrels. Porcupines are also rodents, as well as chipmunks, prairie dogs. Something that is not a rodent that you might think is are possums. Possums look a lot like rats. They have the scaly tails, they have kind of a similar face, but possums are actually marsupials. So rodents have been around for over 54 million years, and they have been interacting with humans for pretty much as long as humans have been storing food and colonizing areas. Rats have been right along the way, adapting and evolving with humans. But around 200 years ago is when we did start to domesticate rats for being pets, as well as being used in laboratory research. So as wild rats became more prominent in populated areas, so did the job of rat catcher. And it sounds just like what it is. Humans would catch rats for other people, and usually they would kill them. But as they did this, they started to notice that there were some rats with interesting colors. And those rats would get kept and saved as pets and sold, and this was how domestication of rats really started. These interesting colored rats would then get bred with each other to make more interesting colors, and the more they were bred, the more they would become what we see today as tame, non-aggressive pet rats. So in wild rats, you're going to see only a few colors. Usually you're going to see a brown rat, and their ears are going to be sitting on the top of their head, and they're usually pretty large. Domesticated rats, however, have a wide range of colors that they can have, as well as placement of their ears. If you look at my two rats, they both have what we call Dumbo ears. And if you think of the elephant Dumbo from Disney, those ears are big. They do the same with rats. Unlike dogs, rats don't vary too much. Even if they look different, they don't really have different jobs like many dogs do. Another difference between domesticated and wild rats is that domesticated rats are a lot more comfortable with lights, with sounds, with humans. Wild rats, on the other hand, are very sensitive to those things. They are primarily nocturnal, which means they are out and about and active at night. Pet rats have adapted to be up whenever their people are up, and they are very comfortable with being touched, being next to a loud person, and that's because they've been bred to be more docile and tame. So rats are omnivores, but for the most part, a big part of their life in the wild is making sure they don't get eaten by a predator. So there are a lot of things that eat rats, like snakes and larger birds. So not having very good vision, they need to rely on their ears, their noses, and their sense of touch pretty strongly. Even living in a home where these rats have never had any danger, they still use their instincts pretty strongly to make sure that they're in a safe place. So when Percy is exploring a new area, he takes a long time before he's fully comfortable. And once he feels comfortable with that area, he'll start running around. He's a lot more playful, but he does want to make sure that it is safe for him. So he's using that nose, and he goes to the places he feels comfortable, like me. And if he cleans himself while he's out, it's usually a soothing behavior to make himself feel better. So probably one of the main things people think of when they think of rats is their scaly tails. People tend to get pretty grossed out by those tails. They think of them as slimy and just not very pleasing on the eye. But their tails actually have a lot of important functions. One of the reasons that it does not have much fur on their tail is because rats are not able to sweat when they get hot. And unlike dogs and cats, they don't pant using their mouths to cool down. So having a tail that doesn't have fur on it is very helpful for releasing heat when they get hot, as well as retaining heat if they're cold. They can constrict their blood vessels in their tail to make it so they can hold on to heat a little bit better. Rat tails are also very important for balance. They use their tail like another leg. I don't know if you've ever seen a squirrel walking on a power line, but they use their tails very similarly. So they use it for balance. So if Mr. Percy didn't have this tail, he probably couldn't walk on my arm this effectively. It's also used when climbing to help them with balance as well. They're not very good at curling these around things, but they could possibly use it to grab onto something if they start to fall. So their tails are very important to them. The scaliness helps with the gripping as well. One of the favorite activities of rats is to nest and to gnaw on things. So that's what Eddie's doing right now. He has some cardboard that he's chewing on. He is not eating it. Rats are very smart about knowing what is edible and what is not. So they chew it up and they end up spitting it out. But what he's doing is he is helping his teeth that are ever growing stay short, as well as creating nice bedding for their little home they have that's made out of a shoebox. I think the feeding behavior of rats is super interesting. If you watch them eat, they grab food with their hands and hold them just like a person does. The anatomy of their hands shows that they do have partially formed thumbs, and this is so they can hold food while they're chewing on it, because they don't have a full mouth of teeth, so they can't really grab food with their mouths like a dog or cat would. Having these human-like hands also helps rats be able to climb, and this is greatly helpful in the wild when animals are trying to escape their predators. So overall, rats are great pets for people who love to socialize with animals but maybe don't have the time or space for a dog. Rats do need a pretty large cage. They do need to be able to move around and play in their cage, but they don't need an extreme amount of socializing every day. It's good to take them out for a few hours, but especially male rats like the ones I have here, they do a lot of sleeping, around 17 hours a day. So they like to sleep a lot, and when they come out to play, they tend to just want to hang out with their people. So rats are very social creatures, as you could probably tell from this video. Both wild and domesticated rats do need to have other rats around to survive happily. So if you ever do decide you might want a pet rat, you do want to get more than one so they can have friends and not get too sad and lonely in their cage. I think rats are very cool pets to have. They teach us a lot about the wild, they teach us a lot about breeding, and they also teach us a lot about humans because rats definitely don't have a great reputation with humans, but owning them has made me see them in a completely different light. And I hope that one day you might be able to interact with one.